And it's also, we've had a lot of good news on the Climate Realism Show the last several episodes, maybe for an entire year here. And this is that the EPA is exiting the climate alarm business. Comes from the New York Times. EPA erases mention of humans causing climate change from some web pages. And as you might imagine, the New York Times is not very happy about it. I'll read a little bit for you. The Environmental Protection Agency has quietly removed the fact that human activity is driving climate change from a handful of pages on its website. The information was deleted from one webpage titled Causes of Climate Change and another that tracks the impacts of the global warming in the United States. The change comes as the Trump administration takes aggressive action to boost oil, gas, and coal, the burning of which is the main driver of global warming. I have to get a buzzer drop for every time there's a false thread in this story. There'll be a lot of buzzes. Mr. Trump, who calls climate change a hoax, has eliminated climate regulations and made it easier to develop fossil fuels and harder to build renewable energy like wind and solar power. Now, the New York Times, of course, quotes an alarmist and nobody from the realist side in this story, and that's what they get. Actually, it's what they get paid to do. Quote, EPA is trying to bury the evidence of human-caused climate change. Rachel Cletus, the senior policy director for the Climate and Energy Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists, a nonprofit science advocacy organization. Bridget Hirsch, a spokesman for Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator, said the Trump administration is focused on protecting human health rather than what she called, quote, left-wing political agendas. Quote, this agency no longer takes marching orders from the climate cult, Ms. Hirsch said in a statement. She noted that the older web pages have been archived and are still available online. Yeah, I mean, the internet's forever. That's the that's the trope. I'll just say here that the story in the New York Times goes on to note that among the pages removed were one on climate change indicators, which is like trends about heat waves, rising sea levels, and other effects. And that's a good thing because that should be replaced by climate at a glance, which does not show any indicators that are quote unquote bad. And the best part of this, the page titled Causes of Climate Change. I think I have the link there for you, Andy. They have a page called Causes of Climate Change, and it doesn't have any mention of human beings at all. They have variations of solar activity cause climate change, variations in the Earth's orbit and rotation, etc. But human CO2 emissions are not listed among those things here. Now, Anthony, I want to start with you here. The New York Times propaganda piece does mention that, quote, elsewhere on the EPA site, human causes of global warming are still noted. There's a page buried somewhere called Future of Climate Change. But this is still good news, right? I mean, because no other president would have done this except for President Trump.
Yeah, it is good news. And, I am amused by all the caterwauling that's out there in the media and the NGOs and the activists and the McKibbenites and all those people. They're caterwauling about, oh, no, humans are not to blame by the EPA. Well, tough noogies, there's a big component of natural variation in climate change, which they've been ignoring for decades. And, what this is focusing on, and I went in and read the EPA website, and we just showed it to you there. It doesn't say, there's no effect from carbon dioxide. It doesn't say that, there's not warmer temperatures this century. None of that stuff is missing. The only thing that's missing is that humans are the direct cause. And these people that are whining all about it hate themselves, hate humanity so much that they feel that has to be in there, because we're to blame. We're awful. We're terrible. We need to change. And you need to change too. And that's the most important part about it. They're all about you need to change. And so, it's just a big tempest in a teapot, in a teacup, I mean. Look, we've got all these different graphs. We've got all these different facts. It's highly well referenced. It's just as well referenced, if not better, than our Climate at a Glance webpage. And so, the only thing it's missing is humans are to blame. And what's the big deal? There's plenty of other places that you can find, like The Guardian every day, and the New York Times every day, and the Washington Post every day saying humans are to blame and you need to change.
Anthony needs his own miter.
I know. I need a miter.
I just want to say that It sounds to me that the Trump administration, since the New York Times admitted that there are still some sites on the EPA site that acknowledge climate change as a danger, that it's a good start, but they still got work to do because the evidence doesn't show climate change is destroying humanity. Any speculation about the future is based on flawed, notably acknowledged flawed climate models that have never been right before. The EPA should be citing data, and the data doesn't show alarming trends, and that's all that should be there. They shouldn't be speculating about huge things in the future based on climate models that fail. So,
Well, it's like
good start, Trump, but keep going.
Well, it's like when you read, the actual science reports from the IPCC, and also, like the state by state climate analysis that our, federal agencies have put out. The data is good, and it really doesn't point to anything very alarming at all. It's actually these are fairly well researched reports, but you get to these portions where they do like these introductory paragraphs and stuff where they are editorializing and speculating about future effects. They're like, well, in West Virginia, we haven't, there's been a very sharp decline in the number of very hot days over the last 100 years, but we expect that in the future, it'll reverse that trend. And it's, and they're experiencing unprecedented historic, warming in West Virginia or whatever. And then you look at the data and you're like, meh. I'm not very alarmed by this. And it's pretty incredible. I do want to point out on that website that we were showing earlier, the EPA website, the last sentence of the first paragraph says that the recent warming can't be attributed to natural causes alone. So it's not, and I don't know if they talk about, I didn't scroll all the way down on the page, but I don't know if they talk about urban heat effect and stuff, which is an obvious, clear, anthropogenic warming trend in cities and stuff.
Right.
Oh, it looks like they probably do. Oh no, I don't know. But that's obviously a anthropogenic warming, at least locally. So I don't know. I'll take our wins where we get them.
Yeah, Jason Isaac, I know that you, me, and a lot of our friends in this business, in the business of promoting climate realism and sensible energy policy, we're kind of disappointed in the first Trump administration, where they seem to pay no attention at all they just basically left the alarmist propaganda on autopilot for, I think, pretty much the entire term. And as we see, there's still some room for improvement on these official government pages, but some progress is better than no progress, which is what we had in the first term.
Absolutely. And there were some people that were in the first administration that didn't support the president pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. They're embracing the need to reduce a so-called need to reduce emissions rather than pollution, understanding that we'd become a world leader in clean air. And so they were kind of buying into the grift and the alarmist narrative, and I think really hindering the first Trump administration. And I'm so grateful because those people aren't in this current administration, which has been fantastic. Trump had 4 years to look at the scam and figure out that it is a scam and what the scam is based on. And the climate Kool-Aid is decarbonization, net zero. And so I think the most transformational effort that we're going to see coming out of the EPA is the rescission of the endangerment finding, something that was put in place by Obama bureaucrats in 2009 at the EPA that claimed that CO2 was harmful to human health and the environment, and thus gave the EPA the ability to regulate it under the Clean Air Act. Just this week, Doug Burgum was on a radio station in Louisiana talking about they couldn't build more coal in Wyoming without carbon capture. And the only reason they couldn't do that was because of the need to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Well, those are gone. The penalties have been taken away. They're getting rid of the endangerment finding. They're getting rid of the greenhouse gas reporting program, which surprisingly, we submitted comment in support of the Trump administration in getting rid of the greenhouse gas reporting program. And the American Petroleum Institute submitted comment and opposition to getting rid of the greenhouse gas reporting program, because some of the majors have figured out a way that this increases cost on the smaller players so they can buy them up and when they're insolvent, or they figured out a way to manipulate the system to their benefit and profit off of it. But it is contrary to Trump's energy dominance agenda to be opposing efforts to get rid of these rules that are detrimental to American energy dominance. So I'm very hopeful that we get rid of these programs, because that's the endangerment finding alone is the bedrock for what all climate policy sits on at the state and the federal level. And this is just a great thing. And the EPA is getting rid of the alarmism on their website and sticking to science. And some of the science now shows that the effect of man-made CO2 emissions does not appear to be strong enough to cause systematic changes in temperature fluctuations. And paleoclimatologists now believe that CO2 doesn't drive temperature, but vice versa. And that temperature increase is primarily caused by the sun. So we're seeing some more, I guess, credible science, not alarmist in nature, trying to drive us into starvation and freezing. So I'm grateful the EPA has done this. They're getting rid of the alarmism from the website. I've had the opportunity to work with some education curriculum companies and remove the alarmism from their textbooks and curriculum so that we can actually raise healthy and happy kids that aren't scared of some fake impending doom.
Anthony, take us home on this one.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things about climate alarmism is that the people that are climate alarmists don't want to read very much. They just simply go with what the narrative is. And so I did a little bit of searching, and guess what? Right here on the EPA website, and if you could magnify that, Andy, down below that, there it is. They talk about in the basics of climate change, most of the warming since 1950 has been caused by human emissions of greenhouse gases. And yet people are caterwauling that we're not blaming humanity enough. Well, there it is right there. Maybe they just haven't gotten to that yet. I don't know. But it points to the totalitarianism of climate change alarmism. They have to have everything everywhere exactly as they want it, or they start whining about it, and saying that we're being unfair and we're headed for doomsday and all these other things. The bottom line is that climate alarmism has failed miserably. Every prediction it's ever created has failed miserably. Yes, it's gotten a little bit warmer, but you can attribute a lot of that to natural changes. You can attribute a lot of that to changes in the how and where we measure temperature and the changes in the weather station and so forth. And by the way, I want to point out you can find out all of that in our book, Climate at a Glance, 40 Prominent Climate Topics, now available on Amazon.com. We'd greatly appreciate it. I want to put out a personal appeal to every one of you watching here. Go to Amazon, look up Climate at a Glance, second edition, not the first edition, second edition. Buy it. It's only $14.95. Make it a stocking stuffer for somebody who's, off the rails about climate change. Maybe that guy should buy it for his wife that we talked about earlier. That'd be a great stocking stuffer for her. Anyhow, buy it, and please leave a comment about it, because the comments from verified buyers are the most persuasive. Thanks.
All right. Speaking of stocking stuffers, because this is the Christmas season, and I did mention the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special with that, that's man's work. But another iconic part of that special was Burl Ives singing Silver and Gold. And that is why we are happy